Welcome to Getting Insightful with Insightful Retreats. I'm Debbie, and with my co founder Emma, we will give you an overview of core leadership tools. In this episode, we're going to focus on psychological safety. Now, this is a word that gets bounced about quite a lot. Is it a real thing? Is it something that we should be adopting in our businesses and organisations? I'm not sure, but I know it's something that Emma's passionate about. Emma, talk to us about psychological safety.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the fact you said, is it a real thing? It's been bounced around. I think it's probably grown in bouncing, if that's the right terminology, over the last 5 years. I think we're hearing more and more of this psychological safety. And I think the thing is, we question what it is. For me, we've given a term to something that really is essentially about creating a space where people feel comfortable being themselves. And you almost think, well, that should be a given. But in the fast-paced, ever-changing world that we work in, we forget that. We forget we're dealing with humans. And with the influx of AI coming in, I think it's even more important that leaders are creating psychologically safe working environments. So that in itself is about people comfortable being themselves, having the ability to share ideas, asking questions, and not just saying yes to things, but challenging in a positive way. Why? What does that look like? How could we do this differently? And actually, when it's really prevalent, if a company has a culture of true psychological safety, the leader has created an environment where people can admit when they don't know something without fear or judgment or backlash. And for me, and I think for many leaders, that has to be all about fostering trust. If you trust me as your leader, then as a team member, I'm going to speak more openly because I know you're not going to judge me. I'm not going to get a backlash from it. And it gives me that place in where, as a team, we're much more innovative. I can never say that word properly. Collaboration is there happening. And, as a team, we thrive. Not only thrive, we're really building something great.
So it does sound pretty essential. But why do you think psychological safety is such a game changer then for leaders and their teams?
Because I really think in the climate that we have, there are many organisations, unfortunately, where people don't feel safe to speak up. Essential ideas or concerns get silenced. I think many of us have been sat in a meeting, and I know I have, if I look back over my career, where I felt a little bit insecure. If I want to say this, my inner dialogue is giving me that insecurity of what will people think? How will people respond? And it's a role as a leader to make their team members feel secure because when they do, they're more likely to take risks, be creative, and bring the whole self to work. And in essence, it leads to better problem solving, fewer mistakes, and a more engaged, motivated team. So for me, psychological safety essentially serves as a foundation for high performing, healthy cultures. And I think, it's really easy sometimes to focus on the negative when we can see it hasn't worked. And there's many examples that we can see where the impact of an environment and a culture where it isn't psychologically safe to speak out, to suggest different course of actions, or to challenge that things have gone wrong. And I'm fairly certain that most of us in Europe, whether we were around at the time or have heard it since, will have heard of or be able to recall the Chernobyl nuclear power plant incident. If you haven't heard of it, then during the Chernobyl disaster, the nuclear power reactor, it basically exploded. But we could have been prevented. And, during the disaster, it came out that many of the engineers and plant workers noticed a number of strange readings, but also things that we were detecting wrong with the reactor. But the culture that was very fear driven, very strict in its hierarchy, made them hesitant to raise concern. So, whilst people knew, some technicians knew that the things weren't right, people didn't speak out. And unfortunately, the biggest disaster for Europe happened. And as a result, I think, it's a critical warning to us as leaders. Are we challenging ourselves and others that we're creating an environment where people could talk up, that they're not feeling silenced, that things aren't left too late to reverse, and hopefully never as disastrous as a nuclear power plant, but small things that don't happen in an organization because someone didn't want to speak out. As a leader, I'd want to question, gosh, why aren't they speaking out? Why don't they trust me that they can say what they're thinking?
Wow, That's a real clear example of the lack of psychological safety within an organization and the impact that it can have. So, as a business leader in our current climate now, what's the impact of developing a culture of psychological safety?
I personally think it's massive. I mean, you have to think about what we've talked around already about psychological safety. In environments, it fosters trust and respect, which in turn boosts morale and loyalty. It encourages honest conversations, even the tough ones, which means we face into problems and they get sorted quicker. But also, I think having an environment and a culture that has psychological safety at its core, where a leader really not only buys into it, but positively promotes it, creates an environment where we're attracting diverse talent because people want to work somewhere where they feel valued and safe and they can make a difference. And over time, that will lead to a stronger, more resilient business culture that can adapt and grow even in more challenging times that are coming up.
Sounds like it makes a lot of sense, but I imagine it's not always that easy for leaders to create that safe space. What are some of the common challenges that they're facing?
I definitely agree with you. I don't think it's always easy for leaders to be in this space. Common challenges, I think it's often about shifting mindsets because leaders need to model vulnerability and openness first. Because without that, you can't change culture. So sometimes organizational culture or a fear of repercussions can hold people back, even leaders. I think also the challenges around consistency. Creating psychological safety isn't a one-off thing. We don't just set out, oh, we're going to do a project, create a psychological safe culture, tick, we've done it. It's an ongoing thing. So it's about embedding it into everyday interactions and policies. It takes a level of self-awareness as a leader as well, and to put our ego to one side to create that environment. I think sometimes there are capabilities that leaders need to put their hands up and say, I'm not so good at. Capabilities like how good am I at leaning into those tough conversations? Or even, do I hear people's view without judgment and being defensive? And if we're really honest, if I put my hand up as a leader and say, I don't have all the answers, but that's okay, we can navigate this together, is so powerful. And I think the good news is leaders are open to change and wanting to get this right.
Yeah. So I guess that we, for leaders that we are listening to this, who either want to check in on their area to see how psychologically safe it is, or want to start fostering that psychological safety environment, what's the one simple step that they could take right now?
Simplest step right now is to actually go from this YouTube talk to another YouTube talk. It's really about listening. For me, active listening without judgment is at the heart of psychological safety because that creates trust. It enables people to show up and ask those tough questions of themselves and their leader. So, to do that, leaders have to be able to listen and encourage the questions and get curious. Now, small, consistent actions like building trust lay the groundwork for a safer, more open environment. And it does start with listening. And there's a great TED talk by Julian Treasure that I totally recommend. Every leader should watch it. It's something that I know we buy into massively, and we've used it in a number of programs that we do with leadership development. But it's out there. It's on YouTube. It's called Five Ways to Listen Better. And if you do nothing else, this is the one small thing. I think it's a 7-minute YouTube clip that will get you thinking as a leader. What does it take to listen? What do I really need to be doing? And I think it's really powerful. So yeah, Julian Treasure's Five Ways to Listen Better would be my one thing you could take away and do right now.
Brilliant. And we can definitely share that in the comments as well, can't we, for people to have that link? I
Yeah.
love that. So, what's the biggest takeaway you want leaders to walk away with regarding psychological safety? Hit us with it, Emma.
Oh my gosh. Okay, the biggest thing, I think it's in our world right now with the enormity of what's going on around us. I think psychological safety is not just a nice to have, it's a must have for modern leadership. When people feel safe, they perform at their best, and your whole business will benefit. It's an investment that pays off in innovation, resilience, and genuine healthy culture. And it's for us, it's so fundamental to modern leadership capability that it underpins our insightful leadership retreats.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thanks, Emma. And how do we contact you for more details or to have a conversation?
Oh, if you want to have a conversation with me, please contact me via LinkedIn if you're not already connected with me, or send an email to hello@insightfulretreats.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts on psychological safety. More importantly, we'd love to work with you to help you create that in your environment.
Thanks, Emma.